Football with friends is fun as hell. My name is Alex Dunlap here with Cody Carpentier on a big Tuesday edition, a Victory Tuesday edition, a CFP rankings release edition of Football with Friends. So happy to be here with you guys. Yeah, man, a lot to get to. We have the Rivals, the whole Rivals 250 has been updated. Texas with some updated or some of the Texas commits with their rankings have been updated. It's going to take a minute before we can get into the reaction show here as these rankings are released, as the ESPN broadcast is just starting, but we'll be able to go through that with you and be able to let you know what's happening as it occurs here. So looking forward to that and reacting to that and seeing exactly how they treat some of these teams. And I think it's going to be really important to see how they treat the two. I've been trying to get answers out of Cody all day about what's going to happen with these two-loss SEC teams, and he just sits there and plays with his phone.
I sit here, I'm drinking some red Kool-Aid because people always say, like, you guys cover Texas, you drink all this orange Kool-Aid. I said, no, I'm drinking the red Kool-Aid because I want to see a 9-3 South Carolina Gamecock team get in the playoff.
I don't see how it's going to happen. I truly don't. But you keep the hope alive. I guess. Do you want to while we're waiting on these? Gosh, that room full of just I'm just looking at these cockamamie fools, man, and just let's see what they do. I kind of look, man. At least I kind of think that,
yeah.
Even if they're not respecting the SEC as much as I would like, I think just based on their actions that they do respect Texas. And so I keep wondering if I don't know. I keep wondering if there's a trap door that Texas falls into, possibly loses at A&M, if that could be a situation where they still get in, and it feels like there's divergent thoughts on it. I keep asking you, and what do you think?
Well, I think there's two things. One, I think it's pretty clear who the top two teams are in the country: Oregon and Ohio State. They literally played each other to a 1-point game. They've been the two most dominant on the season, the two most consistent on the season, some would say, despite Ohio State opening up some drives slower than you'd want, some games slower than you want. And then I think that there's this group right here of Texas, Penn State, Indiana, and Notre Dame that aren't really elite, but they're really, really good. And a lot of people have a problem with the resume. They have a lot of problem with Texas's resume. There's problems with Indiana's resume. People are saying strength of schedule with Penn State. Well, Penn State they have this loss against Ohio State. And they're saying that the committee is not following their own instructions by weighing strength of schedule as much as they should. And by putting Penn State at 4, that's them kind of going against their own rules and logic. And then you have Indiana. Obviously, the resume's very soft, and Notre Dame, who lost to Northern Illinois. Them ranking those 4 teams to me, 3, 4, 5, 6, even with a loss for Texas against A&M, even with a loss for Indiana against Ohio State, I think those 2 teams are still locked in. And I think Penn State and Notre Dame, if they lose, I mean, they're going to lose to a team that's not anywhere near the respectability meter of A&M and Ohio State. If one of those 2 teams lose, you could potentially see them drop out. But I don't see the Texas, Indiana being ranked as high as they are, dropping completely out, given who they play this week and next week.
Do you think that they're going to rank? How do you think they're going to stack up Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama?
Well, that's an interesting one because obviously Bama beat Georgia. Georgia beat Tennessee. Tennessee's beaten.
Tennessee's lost to Georgia, and they've also lost to Arkansas.
But they beat Alabama. So It's kind of like a circle of, goofiness going on. I guess they're probably going to play with the most recent thing, which is Georgia has beaten Tennessee literally this last week.
Mm-hmm.
Bama's loss was 3 weeks ago. I would probably say it's probably going to be Georgia, Bama, Tennessee would be my thought right now. How we're going to see it come out tonight as far as those 3 teams go in that order. Not back to back to back. I'm not saying it's going to do that, but which I think is what the AP has right now. But I think that there's most likely it's going to be Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, and I think it should be Bama, Georgia, Tennessee.
I must just be a caveman to think it's like, well, Alabama beat Georgia.
Yeah, that's what I said. I just said I think Bama should be the one ranked ahead.
Yeah, I think that they think that we're both just cavemen. They have some cockamamie thing that they're doing. I mean, I don't know. It's like, but then again, you lose to this team, and this team and this team beat that team. But to me, that all just starts to feel like, you know,
I have a
it's like
power ranking that way.
it's like I always say, man. It's like the transitive property. It doesn't apply to football. It's like you can't just say just because you beat this team and this team beat you that 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 team's better than this team. We have the first come out here at number 25. Illinois goes from unranked to now being ranked at number 25.
I think Illinois is it's a bad ranking that they keep having to this is like roster fodder, like in fantasy football. You're talking about roster fodder, somebody at the bottom of the bottom of your roster that you just keep cutting. You gotta add somebody, you gotta cut somebody, you gotta add somebody. I think it shows you how shallow the back end of this thing is, with an Illinois being still in there, because they've been in and out pretty much the majority of the last few weeks. And I just don't think Illinois. I mean, Illinois lost to Minnesota 2 weeks ago, and then they get a win this week, and now they get bumped back in. I don't quite get that.
At number 24, UNLV they're 8-2. They go from being unranked to number 24. Missouri is at 23. I believe they were at 23 last week. Iowa State, they go from being unranked, which I thought was weird last week. They go from being unranked to being ranked at number 22. And then who was number 21? Did you see? Arizona. So Arizona State, they go from they were unranked, I guess. Now it's number 20, number 21. They beat they just beat Kansas State. Is that right? So they are now at 21. Number 20, Tulane checks in at number 20. They were at number 25 before, and I guess they had a big win. Who did they beat this last week?
They stomped Temple 2 weeks ago, and then they shut out Navy 35-0 this
Shut out
past
Navy.
week.
All right. Speaking of the academies, Army checks in at number 19 after being at number 24 last week. They're of course 9-0. South Carolina moves up 3 spots to number 18 at 7-3. Cody's Red Kool-Aid Gamecocks,
who play Clemson next week.
And Clemson is ranked 1 spot ahead of them at number 17, up 3 spots from last week. Clemson beat Pitt this last week, but it was a pretty close game. And then Colorado is at number 16, up 1 spot from last week. So they go. Colorado is now. Wait.
Colorado's up to 16.
Where are they going to put? Okay, so they're still going to have of course, they'll still have BYU ahead of Colorado.
Oh yeah.
But I think Colorado now becomes interesting at 15. Texas A&M stays at number 15. All they did was play New Mexico State, so they, no real movement there. Okay, so BYU falls.
There's the big drop.
8 spots to number 14. Dude, I mean, that's the big one, right? That's the big one, of course. They lose to They lose to Kansas this last week, fall 8 spots. So that kind of shows me, this is an interesting one to put a pin on and kind of talk about, Cody. That shows me that whenever Georgia was dropped, all those spots, they were still dropped in a way to where they were at least on the outside looking in, just making room for the group of 5 team, right? Whereas they drop BYU all the way out to where the group of 5 doesn't even come in.
There's a second straight week they've had just a mega drop. So remember, Georgia dropped 9 spots to 12. LSU had dropped 7 spots to 22 last week. So a mega drop for BYU here.
I think that's good for Texas. In the event that Texas does manage to stub their toe, with SMU moves up 1 spot, right there on the bubble at 13. They beat Boston College. They're 9-1. They were at 14 last week. At 12 is Boise State. They were at 13 last week. So I guess they've, yeah. So is that just so?
What?
Yeah, so they're ahead of BYU. So yeah, they're 2 spots ahead of BYU now.
What does that
BYU really took a fall, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you lose to Kansas. Kansas is like 3-6.
Oh my gosh, look at this, Cody. Tennessee down 4 to number 11.
Well, so this makes like
I thought that the 2-loss SET teams were going to come in at like 8, 9,
I think
10.
this is a bigger deal right here.
Georgia
Georgia's a bigger deal. This is
uh,
a big deal because
uh,
Georgia was literally 12 last week.
at 10.
Tennessee was 7, and they beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns.
And Ole Miss at number 9.
And just wait a minute, they go up 2 spots, and Tennessee drops all the way back down to 12. That should show you what they think of the SEC a little bit right there.
Well, what does that tell you?
It means they don't really believe in Georgia. That's what it tells me.
They have Ole Miss over Georgia. Ole Miss. Hold on, who did Ole Miss play?
They were on bye.
Right? Okay.
Miami was also on bye.
Miami also on bye, but they managed to move up one. They move up 1 spot. Yeah, so Miami last week was 9. They move up 1 spot to number 8. They have Alabama at number 7. So they do have Alabama ranked ahead of.
That's a massive jump for a team that just beat the brakes off of Mercer.
Yep. But I mean, Alabama is starting to look like Alabama, and they're looking like they have a pretty clear path. And then one ahead of Alabama was what, Notre Dame at 5?
6.
6. Okay, 6. Because of course Indiana stays at 5 because
everything else should be the same.
They had a bye, and I think it'll go Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon with these last 4. So let's talk about this Alabama thing and what you think this means. With, we talked about how just before we even saw this, how they were just going to rank. Really, I mean, I was kind of wondering about Ole Miss too, but I was like, I thought from spots like maybe spots 7 to spots, 7 to 8, 9, 10 maybe was where Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama would fall. I didn't think that Ole Miss was going to make a move up. So what is this? How did that happen? What is the committee thinking? I'm trying to wrap my mind around it exactly. Well, what is it about Georgia?
I think it's just the inconsistencies of Georgia, and they haven't been like they. I'll stand on this, and I said it as soon as that Texas game got over, that was the best half of football that Georgia has played to that point, and since that point, that first half against Texas was the best half of football that they've played all year. Georgia, the best defense they played, the best offense then they played bad offense. I shouldn't say best offense they've played because they played some pretty good offense second half against Alabama. But that was the best that team has looked all year, was that first half against Texas, and they just haven't been as consistent. They lost to Ole Miss by 18 points 2 weeks ago. I think that definitely goes into Ole Miss being ranked 1 spot ahead of them. Alabama, I mean, we talked about this. We've talked about it on end, is that Alabama kind of is becoming scary. The thing about Alabama's resume is they have 2 losses, both road losses, 5 points at Vandy and 7 points at Tennessee. That was a month ago. But they bounced back from that Tennessee loss on the road to beat Missouri at home, shut them out, and then to go to LSU and beat the brakes off of LSU in Baton Rouge on a night game. I think those are big wins. Obviously, the game against Mercer was kind of just like a double down. They go into Norman this week, and then Auburn. I think they're in a great spot, and we've talked about them being in a great spot, and I think that's being moved up to 7, though. Getting the multiple spot bump is something I didn't expect. I mean, personally, I have them like rated that way on my column over at Orange Buds. I have Alabama rated as my 4th best team, but I didn't think that the college football committee would make that. I guess what do I want to say, that alpha move, that bullish move to bump them all the way up.
Ole Miss.
Alabama.
Oh, Bama, right? But what about Ole Miss?
Well, I just said they beat Georgia 2 weeks ago by 18.
And so that's you think that even though they're idle, it's just like that was just their line of thinking. So they are using. So they are, but if they're using head to head with everything along with the losses, then what about like Tennessee?
What about Tennessee?
Or wait,
Tennessee's 11, Georgia's 10, Ole Miss is 9, and they have Miami, and then they have Bama, so they have
but,
one
but
gap.
Tennessee beat Bama, and now Tennessee's the first one out, and Alabama basically what they're number 7.
Yeah,
What are they?
it was a month ago. I don't. It's got to be that the week. I mean, the one thing I will say they told us is they're gonna take every game into account. Every week is a fresh slate. The way they wrote it, the way they said it, every week is a fresh slate. So that's one of the ways you can take this is that they have a resume, but they're building on a fresh slate every week. And the dominance that Alabama has shown the last 2 weeks, scoring 42 in Baton Rouge, shutting out Missouri 34 rip, and then obviously doing their job against Mercer. It's one of the most dominant teams in football, period. So I get it. Most people may not agree with it, having Bama ahead of Tennessee like that, but that's just kind of the way it works when you have a circle jerk of wins and losses against similar opponents sometimes.
Whenever I sent my SEC rankings in to catch, I mean, I had Texas out, Texas then Alabama.
Yep, 1-2.
Yep.
Yep.
So all right. Here's how the bracket would look if Texas, and we'll probably have a visual of this, but I'll just tell you how it would look. So Texas would, in the quarterfinals, get the winner of Ole Miss and Indiana, as things currently stand. Georgia, gosh, 6-11. So 6 versus 11 would be Georgia and Penn State. They would go on to face the ACC champion Miami. Alabama and Notre Dame, the 8 and the 9 seed, would face off for the opportunity to go play Oregon. And then 5 and 12, right as it stands now, would be Ohio State and BYU facing off to go play Boise. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that there could be a better run out for Ohio State if you're not going to get right.
I mean, right now that's where I want to be. I want to be Ohio State and I want to be Bama. Those are the two teams I think you want to be right now. Here's the bracket for you. Actually, here's Chad Assel built this one up just now. It fills the whole screen for us.
Okay. So Texas, Ole Miss, Indiana. I mean, and Texas moves up, of course, to the second here because of the fact that Ohio State can't be one of the top 4 because they're not a conference champion. So Texas getting 2. Would it be? I think that's certainly preferable to getting 3 as things currently stand. I think I mean, don't you think Ole Miss and Indiana is a better lot of possible opponents than Penn State and Georgia?
Yeah, I mean you're asking for a rock fight with Penn State and Georgia, and you've already dealt with that with Georgia. It's going to be a tough one with Indiana and Ole Miss. You're asking more, I think, something that's going to probably fall into Sark's hand, which is offense, play calling, and you're going to have the better defense in that game. You're going to have to play somebody eventually anyway between Georgia, Penn State, Miami, whoever. But definitely to get through at least the first game, I think I'd rather be where they are. And get that Ole Miss Indiana side of it.
Is it not at all like what is this the second week that they've told us that we're going to get 4. Is it 4 SEC teams?
Well, I just added up right there. So you have Texas at 2. You got Bama 9, Georgia 11, Ole Miss 10.
And I believe right. Well, it's 4 this. It's 4 this week, but wasn't it 4 last week?
Yeah, it was no, because Georgia was the odd team out last week.
Well, okay.
Right?
I forgot. I wish I could.
All right. So last week was Texas, Tennessee was 7,
So
Bama was 10,
seasons.
Ole Miss was 11.
So there's still 4 last week.
Correct.
I think the committee's telling us that they're going to have 4 SEC teams in this deal.
Yeah. I mean, there would have to be something would have to happen for it to become a 5th.
Okay, so then let's do this. Let's do this thought experiment. So, I mean, I know I keep asking about this. They're in the chat. You know, Gary the Golfer in the chat is asking about it. If Texas were to lose a second game, do they then fall behind Tennessee?
I don't. If they lose to A&M, so A&M sitting there at 15.
Yeah, then A&M would definitely bump up into the picture.
Correct. And so if you bump them, let's say A&M beats Texas. Well, I mean, they got to worry about Auburn first, but if they beat Texas, then I think you see everybody shift up, but you also have either Indiana or Ohio State dropping this week. You'll have Alabama going to the conference championship. So, I mean, they're going to be, I'm assuming again, you'll have Ole Miss bump up, Georgia bump up, Tennessee should bump up. Boise really doesn't matter. SMU and Miami are going to play each other. The loser of that game looks like they're going to be gone.
The who loser?
The loser of Miami and SMU in the ACC championship. So 8 versus 13. The loser of that game's done.
Yeah.
So that's going to bump up. That's going to allow that 5th team to potentially bump up in there, like an A&M, if they beat Texas. And then basically what you're saying is, does Texas fall from 3 past all the SEC teams? Did they drop? Because you could. I mean, if they lose to A&M, you'll have an easy argument to say, well, Texas 2-loss, Georgia, bang, bang. They have to at least be 11. Do you put Texas ahead of Tennessee? That's the question I think that becomes happening. So if you have all these guys jump up, Tennessee, let's say Georgia becomes 9, Tennessee becomes 10, A&M is right there. So let's put A&M ahead of Tennessee. Uh-huh. Then is Texas number 12.
Well, but if it's number 12, if they're 12, they get bumped, right?
Depends where Boise State ends up. If Boise State just continues to win, they'll be part of that the group that bumps up.
Okay, right. Okay, so you're saying that
at that point it doesn't matter. Well, actually, I'm wrong. You have the Big 12 team. Sorry.
Oh, right.
I'm sorry. I'm wrong with that.
So even if Boise does still win out, that would cancel out the Colorado or BYU, right? So that just that doesn't change. So if that's, gosh, so, but you do buy yourself one spot, right? And then what to make? And then here's the other thing. How are they going to treat a one-loss How are they going to treat a one-loss Indiana?
Well, I think this has been the big question that everyone's talking about the last day, is if Indiana gets beat by 31-14, which happens to be pretty similar to 30-15, which is how Texas lost to Georgia.
Oscar Elizondo with the super chat. He says, Joey Galloway can, you know what, him. Sorry, I know if FWF is family friendly. I just hate that, man. Still fun as hell. All right, Oscar Elizondo, thank you so much for being here as usual, man. And thanks so much to almost creeping up over 400, close to 500 people watching here live in the Specs chat line. Thanks so much to Specs for being a great sponsor.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers, to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Bex. Cheers to savings.
Cody, is there anything that can happen here because look, we all know that Texas controls its own destiny, right? Texas right now is in the catbird seat, driver's seat. Things look really good for Texas if they can just win. It's not easy to go to Kyle Field and beat a ranked Texas A&M team. They are, as the last time we checked, 4-point favorites. That would indicate that the books at least think that Texas is probably, if you go by the old Boomer rules of 3 points for home field, I think Texas is about a touchdown better. So I'm not doom and glooming the situation. I'm just trying to figure out if there could be hope and optimism for a 2-loss Texas team. And do you have any indication from what you might have heard or anything like that from the way that the committee is and all the rest that, like, there's only going to be one Big 12 team in this thing, right? So we can deduce that.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. Well, so first off, I'm going to jump into our teleconference here in about 18 minutes, and I think that the big conversation is going to be what if. So hopefully I'm going to come back, make some notes. I'll make a post on Orange Bloods, hopefully, if we get some good intel back from them, or maybe I'll just keep it for Football with Friends tomorrow night, and we'll talk about it. But I think that's going to be the big thing is kind of what if this, what if that, for this whole thing. And the bottom line is you come back to it and people want to talk about resumes and stuff. The strength of schedule speaks, and they told us the strength of schedule matters. Texas has the 38th ranked strength of schedule. Penn State's 35, Ohio State's 28, Oregon is 43rd, Alabama 16. You see the trend here. They're all top 50 in strength of schedule. Mm-hmm. Georgia's number 1, Tennessee 18, A&M 25, Ole Miss 29. All the SEC schedules happen to be top 50 strength of schedules. Indiana, 106th. I think it's a different conversation. That's what I think. I think they're two separate conversations that people right now on the Florida State boomer side of this thing, the Danny Cannell, Florida State, they're undefeated, they're not getting respect side of things.
Yeah.
They want to say, well, Texas hasn't beat nobody. And they go, okay, well, Texas also hasn't scheduled an FCS team. You look at the schedule that Indiana has, all 3 of their non-cons are 3-7, 3-6, 3-7, fired their coach. Garbage. Everybody in the Big Ten schedule that they've played this year, like I said yesterday, ranked 9th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. That's the whole Indiana schedule plus Ohio State. The difference is they don't have that second team. They have one single team on their whole schedule, if you really want to talk about it this way. Texas at least is going to have played a couple of teams that are respected, right? You had Michigan early on, which people are writing off, but that's the second best win Indiana has on their resume right now. Next to Washington is their best. You have Texas that lost to Georgia, but then they bounce back. They still have wins against Vandy. They have a game against Texas A&M. That's the difference, is that Indiana doesn't even have a second game. They didn't play a Penn State. They didn't play an Oregon. They didn't play anybody else in that conference to even have a leg to stand on. That's the biggest problem. So if you have one Greek god in your conference that you have on your schedule and you peed on your leg, that's everything. It's like you play the whole FCS schedule and then you lose the one big game. Well, how are we supposed to look at you?
What is the what is the line on that game
for Indiana?
Yeah,
I thought it was like was it 11?
Let me look.
I thought it was double digits.
12
11 and a half?
12 and a half now.
12 and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Looks like most of the all right, what if it goes according to the markets? What if Ohio State beats them 30, just say 38-23.
Alex, I think Florida would be a half point or a point and a half favorite against Indiana on neutral field today.
I wonder what that means, though. I wonder what that means as far as the way. And like you said, we're gonna have to get off early because we got to get on the teleconference. But I don't know what to make. I think that the biggest thing, if you get a chance to ask, is just Why is there? I just don't understand the big difference between between the current 2-loss SEC teams. What's the big difference? They've all played each other. It's this big intermingling of like you know what I mean? It's
Yep.
what's the big like? Why is there this? It feels like they should all be, feels like all those should be back to back.
I mean, they are technically,
Well, you mean you got Miami I guess I guess that's true.
but I think what that tells you though is there's a break there, and I think they're inferring a tier break there, based on what Bama's looked like the last 3 weeks since that Tennessee game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, that makes sense to me.
Like I said, I maybe don't agree with it, but they said we look at every week in its own thing, as its own thing.
I think that the biggest question for Texas. Well, I mean, the biggest thing is just Texas just wins versus Kentucky, and Texas wins versus Texas A&M, and then nothing else matters, right? But if that's a nice graphic by Tyler, looks good. If Texas were to lose versus A&M, it's just can you put back up the other one?
Yep.
If Texas were to lose versus A&M, it's like where does Texas slot? Would I mean they would obviously? I think that they would take head to head with Georgia.
Well, no, what? Georgia would take head to head.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think that they would take head to head into account with Georgia
and strength of schedule.
And so that would put Texas where Tennessee is and where Tennessee currently is, unless any of these other ones fall out. Tennessee's the first one out.
Well, they also have, Diego Pavia is hurt this week, so I'm not sure if he's going to play, but Tennessee does close the season at Vandy. Not saying that, it's not same old Vandy, but it's still Vandy if Diego Pavia is healthy.
So Alabama's got Oklahoma and Auburn left.
Which isn't exactly a layup, but the way Alabama's playing right now, they should smash them both.
Right. And then we have Georgia that has UMass and Georgia Tech. Is Georgia Tech still kind of good?
They've beaten Florida State and Miami. They just beat Miami.
Ole Miss has Florida, who's playing well, and then Mississippi State.
Again, should win.
Tennessee has UTEP and Vanderbilt.
Yep.
And then we know about Texas and Texas A&M. Texas A&M goes to Auburn this week. Then they're at home versus Texas. Texas has, of course, Kentucky at home. Then they go to – it's like the biggest stumbling block for any team left is Texas and or Texas A&M. What's the second biggest possible stumbling block even left among the 2-loss SEC teams? Is it having to play Florida?
Probably.
In Gainesville?
I think that Florida in Gainesville, and then Vandy if Pavia plays that last week in the battle for Tennessee.
Oh man. Oh gosh.
We could be pulling for
the GOAT.
It's probably, I guess, Alex, this probably comes down to answering your question from last week. Your question going into that Georgia Tennessee game last week was what? You said, who do we want to win? And this is the thing. I think we wanted Tennessee to win because I think the conversation between Texas and Tennessee is tighter than it is for Georgia. If you lose and all of a sudden it's, Texas or Georgia, it's not even a question because Georgia beat you and the strength of schedule is in their favor. So if Tennessee would have beaten Georgia, Georgia's now probably sitting at 16.
At 16?
Yeah, because the Georgia was at 12 last week? They would have lost.
Right.
16.
Right. Oh, all right. Right. Amazing. Well, there it is. Cody.
We know that Miami and SMU are going to play, most likely, unless one of them trips up and Clemson gets in there. So one of them is going to be eliminated.
Yeah.
We know that BYU and Colorado are probably going to play. So that's 14 and 16.
Yep.
One of them is going to be eliminated. One of them has to get in. Boise is either going to get in or Army. So that's 12 or 19 or Tulane, whichever of those three, doesn't really matter. Probably going to be Boise if they win out. Notre Dame plays Army. I think this week or next week. That's the other one. That's the other one that kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in this whole thing. Because Army's been obviously they're undefeated.
Army and Notre Dame is this week. Notre Dame's a 14-point favorite.
Nobody's talking about that game at all. And like I know is that in the Bronx? Is that in the Bronx?
I don't know. I just have the sports betting site pulled up. Let's see. It looks like
I think that game's at Yankee Stadium. It is. Wow, night game, NBC and Peacock, Yankee Stadium.
Oh, Yankee Stadium. 7 p.m. 7 p.m.
So that'd be interesting. Everyone's talking about obviously the game for a reason, which is Indiana and Ohio State. But Army, who really honestly hasn't played anybody this year, but they've beaten everybody, they're probably going to lose that game. But hypothetically, so there's Notre Dame. Notre Dame's probably going to walk out. Then the question becomes obviously 2 versus 5. Ohio State, Indiana. If Indiana loses, do they drop out? Because I think the back end of this thing's pretty much going to wash out. And it's really going to become – it's probably going to stay Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, A&M, Texas, if a Texas team loses. And the question is, how many of these teams just wash? And I guess what I'm trying to say is if Indiana loses to Ohio State and Texas loses to Texas A&M, I think you're looking at some sort of three-headed monster of Texas, Indiana, and Tennessee for the final spot in the playoff.
Well, that's easy. All you got to say is, "Hey, man, it's Texas. Who's going to get the eyeballs?" And Tennessee lost to Arkansas.
And that's the thing; they have the worst loss. In Indiana has the worst strength of schedule. So Tennessee has the 18th ranked strength of schedule, but again, they have the loss at Arkansas, which is a similar opponent. And I think Arkansas beat Tennessee at Tennessee, right?
I think it was.
And then obviously Texas beat Arkansas at Arkansas most recently. And that was at Arkansas. Never mind. But anyway, so they both lost to Georgia. I think that they probably take Texas over Tennessee in that conversation. So again, if you lose, I still think you get in there at that 11-12 spot.
Get some beef jerky. Go get some. It's delicious. Go to Texas Beef Traders. Remember, we have the show at Texas Beef Traders this Friday, live from Texas Beef Traders. Final Takes Friday, going into what's going to be, dude. It's a monster. It's a monster game. They got to get a win versus Kentucky. It's going to set them up for what they're going to need to do versus Texas A&M. You don't want to be sitting there. I think that we did a good job kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts of what would happen. I'd have to get into the CFP with an A&M loss. And it's just going to be, you're going to have to be stating your case versus a one loss Indiana, and then just a conference rival with some good wins in Tennessee. Also, there's the watch party and post game show at TCH Social. They're going to have $1 draft beers, $2 electric jellyfish. And you can, while you're up there, you don't have to play cards, but they have good food and everything and drinks. And I think Ketchum's going to be up there.
Dude, I might have to skip the game and just go to TCH.
Yeah, but you don't have to play cards. But if you're into it, if I ever go up there, I'm going to watch the game and then go play cards. But you don't have to. It's mainly they just want you in there. So it's like an awesome, really nice sports bar. So go check that out. Check out Texas Beef Traders. Check out Poncho Outdoors. Thanks again to Specs. Cody hopping on. Oh, Cody, look at modeling the Poncho Outdoors. That's that blue one, huh?
I love it.
I have the sage green one I was wearing earlier. I think I'm going to order the blue ones here with maybe one of these next orders coming up. But anyway, thanks to everybody for being here. To a ton of people here, almost over 500, up to close to 600 people watching between X and YouTube. So we cannot thank you guys enough for being here and continuing to make the show fun and successful. It's a little bit of a shorter show today because of the CFP teleconference. Cody's going to see what kind of answers he can get on that. So thank you guys so much for being here. Please like the show, subscribe to the channel. We're here every night, 6 p.m. So make sure and tune in. Thank you guys. God bless you. For Cody, I'm Alex. We are done.